Welcome to this full council meeting. I'll just open with karakia, kia tau mai te maramatanga, kia tau mai te rangimarie, kia tau mai te kaha me te aroha mō tēnei kaupapa hui e tai ki e. Just to note that we will be adjourning at 12:30 for lunch. At 1 p.m. we've got a presentation from Te Urukahika, so the regional council people, and then we'll resume the public meeting at 1:45. We've got a mix of people on Zoom and in person, so obviously just remember microphones on, microphones off, etc., etc. Apologies. Do we have any apologies? I think not. He's here, so and Brent I've seen as well. So I don't think either of them are apologies. So we'll now move to the. They're both here now. We'll now move to the public forum. So we've got two speakers. First, we've got Nathan Silcock speaking on behalf of the Moutere Hills Residents Association about Upper Moutere footpath, and then we have Rich McCoy speaking in relation to affordable housing solutions. So Nathan, you're first up. So if you'd like to grab a seat, push the little button on one of those microphones. And you've got 10 minutes should you need it, and I'll give you a bit of a nod at 9-ish just to let you know that you're approaching 10 minutes.
Yeah, we should be under on
just go.
opportunities for questions.
Over to you.
Perfect. Firstly, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Nathan Silcock, and I'm the chair of the Moutere Hills Residents Association. Today for us is all about road safety. That's speeds, paths, and crossings. I want to provide some background on our efforts today, the journey we've been on, and why we're here today. Essentially, this is an incredibly important issue to our community. As you can no doubt tell by the attendance that we've got here, we've managed to get a great show of support. And also we want to note, as most of you will be aware, that there was an incident earlier this week in our community where a local child was hit by a car. It was right in the village centre. And so we've seen the real consequence of the sorts of decisions that we make in times like this. So also want to introduce Andy and Fuji from our school board, Upper Moutere School Board, who are here today. It's been an ongoing issue for the school, as you can imagine. And those of you will live in the community and will be familiar with the area. It's a challenging terrain. Also, before I go into detail on what work we've done and what we'd like the council to do, I want to acknowledge the challenging environment that you all operate in. Possibly the most challenging that I've seen it recently. I'm reading a lot of headlines and I'm noticing all the issues. Specifically, I'm talking about competing local interests. We're a complicated area, budgetary constraints, and probably mostly the challenging and what I describe uncertain regulatory environment. I note these and I acknowledge them, but despite them, it's important that the council continues to serve its community and listen to its people. So firstly, I want to talk about speed generally and crossings. At our 2024 AGM, our members discussed specific concerns around road safety, focused on speed generally, and specifically safety around the school. There's a lot of risks on our road, both generally and around the community and the school. As a result of concerns, we launched a petition to reduce the speed limit on the Moutere Highway to 80 kilometres per hour, reduce the speed limit in the village to 40 kilometres an hour, and to install a pedestrian crossing in the Moutere village near Upper Moutere. We've consulted with 3 schools and childcare centres, all in there, basically all of those education centres in the area, and they were all strongly in support of speed reductions. With the absence of the pedestrian crossing aspect, these requests are very broadly in line with the council's proposals. Our petition's got 317 signatures, which is very significant given the size of our community. We urge you to continue to advocate for pedestrian safety and speed control, and to continue to fight for speed reductions and to investigate a pedestrian crossing in the village. We understand there's intentions to do that, but we're reiterating our support for that and really highlighting its importance. Secondly, I want to talk about footpath safety. It's a 15-minute drive from our community to somewhere with a 100% safe place to walk. of any reasonable length. For one community member with disabilities, the impact on them with a lack of footpath has been significant. And I also want to give a little bit of background. The Moutere Hills Community Centre was rebuilt approximately 20 years ago, and that's when first discussions around a link started. As you should be aware, it's 1 to 2 kilometres away from the village. It's an odd design, as is a lot of the village, for historical reasons. And so I've already tabled and passed around a letter from the Moutere, the Community Centre's board, in support of the pathway. There's been many such letters of support over the years. They all say roughly the same thing. I'll leave you to read it in your own leisure. A little bit more on background. So in 2012, the Moutere Hills Residents Association was created. It was to give a voice to the residents of the Moutere Hills area and to provide a link between the town village and the phenomenal community centre. I want to pause here and just note how great the centre is. It's incredibly well managed and resourced, and it's really bizarre that it's so disconnected from the local population base. The safety pathway project has been very slow. So I mentioned in 2012, the Residents Association was created. And so we outlined some background on how it's progressed. In March 2019, the pathway was ranked the highest priority for importance and safety out of all 85 proposed footpaths in the entire district. So that's 2019, number one. A month later, our association constructed the first 180 metres of footpath using community funds. So that runs from the community centre to Country Kids, basically leaving roughly a straight line up to the village. In May 2019, TDC approved the footpath with plans initially set for the first half of 2020. Yes, several years ago we had plans. Nearly 2 years later, the council advised the construction of the footpath needed to be postponed. There were some land issues. Over 3 years after that notification, finally we got the land settled, an agreement was signed, and the footpath was scheduled for February 2025. 4 months later, the council lost some assumed funding from NZTA and effectively voted to delay the project. So in summary, it took us 7 years to get the footpath ranked number one. It took the council less than 2 years to lock in a plan before it got officially delayed. And from there, it took the council over 3 years to secure the land. Throughout the period, the council continued to ask us to stay out of the process, to trust them, and they assured us that the funding was secured. While it was frustrating for us, I said here we waited patiently. Probably semi-patiently would be fair, but we largely trusted the council. If at any stage the project had moved more quickly, we'd probably have a footpath by now. The council controlled the process, and I note, perhaps a little bit harshly, but I feel fairly, the only time the council appeared to move quickly throughout this process was when the delay happened. That happened very quickly. I watched the video of the vote to delay the footpath on the 24th of October. I acknowledge the difficulties of budgets and the challenging environment, but the council had other choices it could make here without raising rates or increasing debts. It's about priority and choices and the smart use of available funds. That vote lacked consideration of alternative options, the weight we've already endured, and the council's contributions to those delays. So as a result of this, our community feels forgotten and unimportant. Whether you count the wait we've had for this footpath as 12 years or just the time spent as the number one footpath, that's about 5.5 years ago, we've waited long enough for this footpath. It's hugely important for safety. I understand that there's going to be a proposal on the 11th of December to reinstate the original timeframe to February 2025. Please support this proposal. The impact on the council is negligible, but the impact on us and the significance to us is huge. We remain ready to help in any way possible. So in summary, please keep our community safe and connected. Please continue to fight for speed reduction plans. Please investigate a pedestrian crossing at the Moutere Hills Village. Please continue to work with the community and genuinely consult to improve other connections and pathways. And please reinstate the safe pathway timing to January and February 2025. Thank you for your time and hearing us out.
Thanks very much, Nathan. Thanks for a very comprehensive submission and obviously for everyone taking the time to come and attend today. So we don't generally ask questions in public forum, and I think you've pretty much covered both the history, the importance to the Upper Moutere community, and you're welcome to come back should you feel able to on the 11th, when the matter will be reconsidered with the report that you've already referred to. So thanks for taking the time to come and submit to us today, and appreciate everyone else who's come in your support. So thank you.
All right, thank you. We'll give you room back.
That's all good. Next up, we've got Rich McCoy. Welcome, Rich. So I will come across to you. So 5 minutes. I'll give you a bit of a nod at 4.5, and we'll just wait briefly while everyone. I want to flick the doors. Yeah, just wait a second. Cheers, mine. All good. Over to you.
There we go. I'll try that again. Good morning. I'm here to talk to you about low impact affordable housing solution that's having considerable issues in the region at the moment. I'll introduce myself, outline my perception of the challenges, and make proposals to make good those challenges, hopefully. So this is who I am and why I'm talking to you today. I'm a father of 4-year-old twins with a 30-year track record in experience in service design, working both in the public and private sectors globally. Unfortunately, I was made redundant in January due to the economic downturn and the rise of AI. So when I was made redundant, WINS advised us that we should reduce our housing costs. But we couldn't find anything that was more affordable within the region. So we used our savings to buy a bus and create an eco-friendly and beautiful home in an old horse paddock in a community with friends just down the road for these guys. But before moving to Aotearoa, amongst other things, I was the creative director for Frome Tiny Home Show, which was a visionary initiative set up by local council to try and tackle the growing housing and resource issues in the region. And during those meetings, New Zealand was often portrayed as being a global leader in the field of like affordable housing and tiny homes and alternative lifestyles. And furthermore, the region prides itself on producing fine produce, artisanal goods, and fostering creativity. I mean, just look at the beautiful murals on the side of the wall of the liquor store in Moutere, depicting a happy community of seasonal workers in a field, living in a tiny shepherd's hut. And it's beautiful, and it's just it sings to what the region talks to. However, since moving into a bus here, I've learned that this global reputation for being at the forefront of the tiny house movement seems more of a fantasy than Lord of the Rings. But fear not, Frodo, all is not lost. We can do this. The challenge that I see is, I'd like to detail some challenges in the region's reputation concerning tiny homes and affordable living, and also some proposed solutions. So please bear with me. The first challenge is the region's crippling 8-week in habitation policy. My understanding is that the proposal was made to extend this to a much more reasonable 108 weeks. However, the council seems reluctant to act until the central government makes a proposal on certain regulations in January. But despite this, they seem unwilling to defer enforcement, even though they will be aware of a relevant regional case currently under appeal in the High Court. This inconsistency regarding the central authorities' influence leads to significant confusion and frustration amongst the community. The second challenge concerns the unclear and confusing classification of what constitutes a building in this region. I found inconsistencies in the policy document itself created by this council, with the local body's text contradicting central MB's taxonomy listed in the appendices. It's reasonable to assume that the central government has authority over such discrepancies. I'm sure you'd agree. The third challenge relates to how inspections are initiated. I'm hearing frequent stories from the community about inspectors triggered by so-called anonymous complaints, often followed by drone or increased small plane activity over people's properties. Some reports suggest that these anonymous complaints might actually originate from the inspecting officers themselves, whilst Mr. King himself has refuted this, stating that inspectors merely record verbal public complaints into the system. This process lacks the rigour one would expect when the consequences of these inspections and rulings can be so severe, forcing vulnerable people to relocate. But we can make this work. We can improve the situation by both revive council's reputation amongst the community and enable people to live in low-cost, environmentally friendly housing without constant fear of being seen as sub-citizens and being surveyed and chased off their land by council officials with clipboards. These are the four actions that I propose. The council could publicly state whether they intend to hold off enforcement actions against people living in structures as defined identically in the TRMP and RMA until the courts rule on the matter. This seems appropriate considering that the council previously offered no opposition to the High Court stay of order. The council could publicly clarify their willingness to amend their TRMP definition of building to align with the central government MB's taxonomy definition. The council could clearly outline the dependencies and timeline for potentially amending the unrealistic 8-week policy to the proposed fairer 108-week timeframe in a published statement. And the council could publicly state that inspecting officers are expected to conduct themselves in a manner befitting. They should not engage in hunting expeditions for people peacefully living alternative lifestyles, either by choice or circumstance. Additionally, they should clarify that they do not condone the illegal use of drones and other aircraft to survey public citizens, including children going about their daily lives. I believe that publicly addressing these concerns, we can reduce the perceived hostility between council and those living alternative lifestyles, and this will help restore the region's reputation as a welcoming, vibrant, diverse, creative, sunny, beautiful and accepting place, a reputation it rightly deserves. Tiny homes are part of the solution, as Mr. King rightly agreed in his reply email to me on the 26th of November. Let's move forward together with this and with this intention, embracing rather than chastising those who either choose to or have to adopt this solution in order to provide a roof over their families' heads. Thank you.
Mr. McCoy. Right, we're now moving on to the confirmation of minutes. There are quite a number contained in the agenda. So firstly, there's the Tasman District Council meeting from the 24th of October. So I'm looking for movers and seconders for each of these. Don't be shy. Work is good. Councillor Dakey, is there a seconder? Councillor McKenzie, all in favour, please say aye. Right. The 31st of October 2024. Councillor Kinnemont and Councillor Dakey, all in favour, please say aye. Right. The 7th of November 2024. Councillor Mailing, seconded Councillor McKenzie, all in favour, please say aye. The extraordinary council meeting on the 14th of November. Councillor Butler, seconded Councillor Kinnemont, all in favour, please say aye. The confidential section of the 24th of October. Move Councillor McKenzie, seconded Councillor Dakey, all in favour, please say aye. Confidential part of the 7th of November. Move Councillor Mailing, seconded Councillor Dowler, all in favour, please say aye. And lastly, the confidential part of the extraordinary council meeting from the 14th of November. Moved Councillor Kinnemont, seconded Councillor Ellis, all in favour, please say aye. Thank you. And then we have the navigation safety bylaw deliberations from the 18th of September. So this can only be moved by Councillor Mailing, Butler, Dakey or Dowler. Moved Councillor Mailing, seconded Councillor Dakey. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Declarations of interest. Are there any in relation to anything in today's meeting agenda? There is not. Next up, we have Waimea Water Limited's annual report. Mike Scott and Doug Hattersley are both with us. If, gentlemen, you'd like to come up to the table. Welcome. I'll hand over, Doug. I'll hand over to you. So, Mike, you want to flick your microphone off? Yep, and you have a presentation. Yes, you do. We will just fine. Right. Thank you. Yeah, feel free to start either before the presentation comes up or when it does.
Yeah. I'll just introduce you. Thanks very much, and we're very pleased to be here today. I'm here on behalf of the board and with Mike, our CEO, to present the annual report and also our latest quarterly report as well. So I'll just let there'll probably be a few questions, so I'll just let Mike go through it for you. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Council. So I've just got a few slides here by way of update on where we're at with the dam operation, and then we'll go to Q&A on both the annual report and the quarterly report, which we provided last week, and I assume you have. So by way of overview, as you are aware, construction is now completed, the contract is finished, demobilised, gone, and we are working through the ancillary works right now, mainly platforms, turbine, some access works. The dam is commissioned and everything's operating. And other than the water clarity, which I'll come back to shortly, we're operating in full compliance with the resource consent. With respect to the project, we are completing the ancillary works. So you can see the photo there on the right-hand side. We're putting the access platforms up the side of the spillway. That's in progress as we speak. The turbine is due to be installed in the next few weeks, and we have a bridge to go in probably in February. We're also now in the defect period post-construction. There's a 2-year period where the contractor needs to fix anything that doesn't work to design. So we're replacing some actuators and completing repairs. And as a whole, between the contract has demobilised, and we ourselves are also demobilising. We have spent $205.6 million to the end of October 24. We're forecasting $211.3 million, which is in line with what you've been previously advised, and Mike's been talking to you about. And really, the last remaining risk to the project now, the project cost, is the contract disputes, and we expect to have more clarity around that in the near future. Operations. So our operating systems have been implemented. We've made good progress there. Our dam safety systems have been submitted to the TDC for approval, so that's for the council. That's consistent with the new Dam Safety Regulation 2022. Our surveillance program is working well. We have no issues. The dam's performing very well, and everyone's very happy with its performance. Our emergency preparedness is complete. You can see a couple of photos there of some training exercises. They're the fire brigade pulling out a dummy from the culvert. Our operating budget and costs, we're running at or below our budget and water charges, which is good. And with respect to the water, the reservoir is full and ready to go for the season. In fact, we are about to open the small DN300 valve for the season shortly, because we are now pushing up against temperature limits in the river. I think the water coming out of the downstream of the dam is about 20 degrees at the moment. which is great for swimmers, but not so great for the ecology. So we're going to have to start releasing some water from the bottom. And as you know, under the TRMP, we're operating with dam provisions. So I'm sure Kim can give you a better understanding than I can provide you, but that basically means there's different restrictions this season for the investors and the non-affiliated users. And under our funding agreements, we're getting pretty close to our project completion as well once the power is installed. I just want to spend a couple of minutes, if I may, on water quality. I know there's a bit of chatter going around the community on water quality, and a little bit of rumour. So I thought I'd just talk about that now, so you understand where we're at with water quality. We have a pretty strict regimen of testing. We test the reservoir and the river regularly. We are in compliance with 8 of the 9 consent measures. We have no issues. The one consent condition that we are not meeting right now is the water clarity, and we essentially have clarity that's below the 5 metre specification in the consent. So the water that's coming into the reservoir actually fails the consent itself, and therefore the water that's going out of the reservoir is also below the 5 metres. The consent says that's caused by the dam, and arguably if it's coming in below spec, then it's not been caused by the dam. The issue really is around some of the sediment that's been washed into the reservoir during the heavy rainfalls, and there has been some algae come into the reservoir from the Upper Lee River as well. To mitigate that, we are turning over the reservoir frequently. I think we've turned it over 7 times since the 1st of March, including sort of almost 2 times off the bottom of the reservoir. And we continue to monitor the water quality, and there'll be an ecological review at the 5-year mark, which is a consent requirement. A bit of technical background here, but the headline is that we're in compliance on nutrients and chlorophyll, which is below which complies with the standard, but with the consent, but also complies with the National Policy Statement Freshwater Management Standard as well. And on the cyanobacteria, which is a toxic found in some algae, we effectively have 0. So we are at the A band in the National Policy Standard, which is there is no issue here. I won't go through this, but just a table for your information as well. We also looked at the New Zealand drinking water standards. So the standards for manganese, nitrate, and nitrate there is shown. The maximum acceptable level shown there, and then you can see the recordings that we have on the right hand side being orders of magnitude below the drinking standard. And that's all I have. So with that, I'll go to any questions on my presentation and the annual report and the quarterly report. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for the presentation. Open for questions. So Councillor Butler, Councillor McKenzie, Councillor Kinnamoth.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Yeah, thank you for the report. I mean, it's we've seen over the last year or so the transition moving from completion to operation, and one of the issues that I'd like to raise is just the environmental protection, because worldwide there's been a focus on eels being blocked from getting up dams. So, and I know that that you're attending to that, but I'm just thinking, well, it's important to have a focus on it, because it is something that will bring attention, I would think, from environmentalists. Well done on the biodiversity program that you're running. I see that you are going to be planning for an operation, a strategy to get the trap and transfer going for eels and fish, or eels being tuna as well, would be quite good to change the name. So, you know, well done on that, and we'd look forward to seeing that. And I think that just from a public relations point of view, it's really helpful to you know, publicise these things, because that's where the attention comes, and it's a worldwide thing. Yep, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. If I may just provide a bit of an update. So next week we start our 4-day per fortnight trap and transfer. So there'll be six stations where we trap and transfer eels and any fish from downstream of the river, and then 4 days every fortnight we empty those traps and take them up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you very much. Through you, Mayor. So just, you know, as a member of the community, let's just say over the summer, you know, I want to take small children up the Lee Valley and go swimming in those magnificent spots. So what is going to be my summer experience in that water with respect to the water clarity, the temperature, but more importantly, do I need to have any concerns about releasing of water and impacts on the flow, or how, as a member of the public, what do I need to know before I go up there swimming?
There's nothing different to before the dam, right? If it's heavy rain, there will be different in the water, as it always was. As you saw in the second to last slide, I think I put up, the water is of a good quality and safe. And orders of magnitude below the thresholds for drinking water. So we will be releasing water if there is a drought, right, and drawing the reservoir down, and that water will be essentially clear to the extent that there isn't rainfall.
Sorry, Kathy, you talked about the chemical side and the physical side, surges and things like that, if you're swimming.
Particularly surges. I mean, I'm just pretending that I'm a completely uninformed member of the public and I want to take the little toddlers up there. Is there suddenly, if it's in the middle of a drought period and you're releasing water, is there going to be a surge of water? How will I know that? What do I need to be aware of?
Yeah, I'll let Mike know that.
Yeah, so when we release water, it's 2 cubics. It's pretty low, right? I mean, it's very, very low. It'd be barely noticeable. I mean, at the spring challenge, we released 12 cubics, and that lifts the river slightly. If we do need to draw down the reservoir for some unforeseen reason, then we would put notices up like we did for the spring challenge and warn people that the river's going to increase.
And if there's water coming in from a storm, sorry, Councillor. So if there's water coming in from a storm into the lake, then they would just go straight over the spillway, you know, as well. So, but you won't be swimming then, I don't think, in the storm. So,
I mean, I guess what I'm really getting at is, you know, sometimes the public don't know these things, and so we're coming into summer. Maybe it would just be, you know, quite a good communication thing to, hey, enjoy swimming safely at your leisure as you always have.
Yeah, I agree. That would be a good message to send, because there may be people who, as you say, may have questions about particularly the physical flow levels. So getting that message out will be important. Councillor Kilmont.
Thank you, through the chair. Great report, gentlemen. I like the positive side of things. My question is a bit on the negative side. I've heard through the rumour mill that sides of the dam are collapsing inwards. You know, there's slope instability around the edge of the dam. Is that a rumour mill, or is there it is a yes or no? You're quite happy with the slope stability on the edge of the dam on the
Yeah, we're happy with the performance of the dam and the slopes. We have no issues. We have a regular surveillance program where we're surveying both the dam on a monthly basis, instrumentation on a instantaneous real-time basis, and we do reservoir inspections as well, and we've had no issues.
Thank you. I can use that is your other extent in the future?
Please do.
Deputy Mayor Bryant.
Thank you, Mayor Tim. Just a couple of questions and a comment. Mike and Doug, firstly, congratulations on getting to this. We were finally starting to get some good positive news. As it says in the report, this all started in 2001 when we had quite a severe drought and we had restrictions on both urban and rural water. Hopefully, if we had another summer like that, hopefully we don't, we'll be able to compensate or release water so that the community is not affected as it once was. Just around your operating costs, you have stated that they're lower than you thought, budgeted. Is that likely to be ongoing now? That they'll come down now that you're all complete and you'll have some certainty about what they're going to cost on an annual basis?
Councillor, we need some time, we need some run time, right? I mean, there will be road maintenance, reservoir maintenance, clearing the debris boom. So yeah, we just need more time to get a better feel for the costs. But I mean, right now we are tracking at or below our budget. I mean, for example, we haven't actually cleaned the debris boom yet. The wind seems to blow it back up the reservoir.
Right, thank you. And then my second question is, now that we're getting to the best end of this whole project, is there going to be some recognition of the work that the likes of the staff, contractors and others have done to get to where we are now?
Yeah. I think we got one more significant milestone to reach before we get all enthusiastic about celebrating.
So councillor, your question is, will there be like a civil opening ceremony? Yeah, I'll take advice from the council on that one.
Mike has been positively inclined towards this option. I have been less enthusiastic. That's what he's trying to say without saying it. Perhaps. Councillor Shellcrest.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for the report. Hey, just got three things. Just a wee bit more on the turbine. Everyone loves a good rumour mill. I did see a photo of some green algae up at the dam. Just like to know a bit more about that. And just one other thing was the 20 degrees. Is that warmer than normal? Do we have a temperature of the river at this time of the year normally? Because that does seem quite high. And is that, yeah, that's my three. So turbine, green, algae, and the 20 degrees.
So, councillor, the 10 kilowatt turbines are pretty small units just to provide power to run the dam, essentially. We have had some delays with that. It's due to be shipped down from the North Island next week and installed before Christmas. That means we can get off the standby generators. Is that your question? Yep. The algae, the photos you've seen. Yep, there was some algae at the very top of the reservoir. There's been some algae come in from the Lee River above the reservoir. We are monitoring it and testing it. There was algae before we put a dam in as well. I mean, it was when the temperature was warm and the flow was low, we were getting algae over the last few years before we actually started filling the reservoir. We have tested it. One of those numbers I put up in the slide before says that there's zero toxicity in the algae at the moment, and we meet the A band of the national standard for that toxicity. Essentially, the measure was that it's no different to natural flow.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's just, is it still there? And obviously, how much more do you think it's going to, build up at the top there? It's obviously as much a visual thing as a toxic.
So it's not there now because it got washed out in the last rainfall. We expect it to come back in another still period, and then we're going to do some more tests on it.
Just the 20 degrees.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
so we're pushing up against 20 degrees, which is what's in the consent. So we're not quite there yet. It's getting warmer, mainly because the water that goes down the spillway is coming over the top of the reservoir, so it's the warmest water. So we'll start releasing water from lower down in the reservoir.
So it would be higher than normal temperature at this time of the year because there's heaps of swimming there the other day. That's probably why.
Yeah, look, I'm sorry, I don't know whether it's normal, warmer than normal.
Councillor Hill.
Kia ora, thank you, Chair. Hi, Mike. Just wondering about the little the figures around the water quality being below the drinking water standards. Did that surprise you? Was that expected?
Yeah. So below means better than, right? So
Yeah.
the measurements are well below the thresholds of the water standard. So it's good. The water's good quality. And no, I wasn't surprised by that. Because there isn't really many nutrients washing into the river. I mean, it's forestry, it's not agriculture.
Thank you. And in terms of the emergency preparedness, that being complete, what was the scope of that? So I see someone getting a dummy getting pulled out through that culvert, and just wondering what the what's the emergency is. So it's if something happens up there on site, just a little bit around the scope of that.
Yeah, Councillor, we have a number of plans. So under the Dam Safety Regulations 2022, we have to have an emergency action plan, and that's in place. In fact, that's in the consent as well, and that it's been submitted to the TDC as well and previously approved. So the emergency action plan is in place, and we've tested it once. We also have a emergency response plan for any accidents on site. And then we have a familiarisation with the dam, with emergency services. In fact, I think so we had the fire brigade come up to site earlier this week. So Tuesday? Yeah, Tuesday. And then we have the emergency services coming up next Friday.
Thank you. And in terms of the points that Councillor Mackenzie was raising about, public knowing what's happening in the river, and agree that comms will be good, and for council to be able to put something out about that would be good. I think we could have a little bit of newsline, couldn't we, around questions being asked around, is it safe to go swimming in the river, or?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think both Newsline and our website and other forms of communication, that's something we can do probably better than Waimea Water are able to. So I think we'll take note of that. Rob is about to send you all, Rob, wherever you are, the graph of water temperature things over the last 3 years.
Just last
swimming season, which will demonstrate that at this time of year, those temperatures are not uncommon. So you'll get that on an email in due course. Next up, I've got Councillor Green, and then Councillor Walker, then Councillor Ellis.
Thanks through the chair. Just looking at the slide, I think it's called the project slide, where you've detailed your revised forecast. You were forecasting 207 million and are now forecasting around 211, which I've got to say is overall a staggering cost increase from the original P95 price. But leaving that aside, what does the additional 4 million relate to? Is this all the ancillary works? And my second question, kind of abutted against that, is the construction has ended. Are all ancillary and future costs now being treated as operational maintenance costs, and they're shared equally based on shareholding, or are we still carrying full liability or responsibility for any cost increases?
Sure. So, Councillor, you may recall, I believe, in September, the council briefed you on the project cost. I think it was $207 million at the time after the adjudication, and that there was further cost to come with defending the claims through arbitration. So that cost of 211 now reflects the incremental cost of the legal cost for arbitration, and that was made clear to you, I believe, in September as well. with respect to the ancillary works, that's part of the budget, and we're still on budget for that. So the turbine and platforms is covered within the previous cost forecast, and that's still on budget. Once those works are finished, then we achieve project completion, and that is the end of the project costs, and thereafter works are water charges, operating costs essentially, and they are paid by the two shareholders in proportion to their shareholding. Sorry, Mike, do you want to add something to that?
Through me, I can confirm, as part of the current negotiations, we've reviewed the costs through to completion. So what typically referred to as the run-out costs, they are going to be incurred in line with the budget. So I have no concerns about further project costs. And in terms of Councillor or Deputy Mayor Bryant's question, Waimea Water Limited will present a revised 5-year budget to Council as part of the Statement of Intent process that will come to Council in March next year. They'll obviously be in a position to better assess the ongoing operational costs as they finish that, or as they work towards the transition from build to operate. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Walker and then Councillor Ellis.
Yeah, thank you, through you, Mayor. Just furthermore to a conversation that has already been had from Councillor Hill, so the emergency preparedness and your emergency action plan, what do your neighbours know about what that looks like? And how would they know when you do your surveillance? One was presuming that that surveillance would be just on the dam footprint. But if your surveillance picked up something, what does your action plan have in it to notify your direct neighbours and anybody else in the path of what potentially could happen?
So, Councillor, the neighbours, particularly those downstream of the dam, are familiar with our emergency action plan, and there are communication channels directly with those people as well. And we've also worked with emergency services on informing the wider community on a response. With the actual surveillance plan is rather technical, and so we monitor that in real time and review it every month. So it's looking at piezometers, deformation, and we've seen absolutely nothing to be alarming at all.
So if there was an event, how would, obviously your direct neighbours know the process, how would the rest of our community be made aware of it?
So we follow the emergency action plan, which has the communication protocols in it. So there's communication directly via text message, and then through the emergency services as well. So the emergency services can actually activate a text message signal to alert anyone that needs to be alerted.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Councillor Ellis.
Thank you. Thanks much for your report. I've just got another question to add to my list, but I'm just interested in the issue of the water clarity. So we're not meeting one of our resource consent conditions, and you attributed that to sediment coming into the reservoir. Is that correct? It can't be surprised that there's sediment coming into it. So what is the plan moving forward to deal with that issue? And what are the risks if we continue to not meet the resource consent? And then further to what Councillor Walker was asking, what's the cell phone coverage like up the valley?
So the cell phone coverage up the valley, my understanding is that the neighbours who have houses further down the valley have cell phone coverage. On site, we have coverage by Starlink. So you can actually use your cell phone by using wireless through Starlink. We also have radio comms as well. With respect to the water clarity question, consent number 111 of our resource consent talks about there's a suite of conditions which we will meet. I think C is the clarity, and it does say caused by the dam. So it's arguable that if it comes in with sediment and it goes out with sediment, it's actually not caused by the dam. It's how the water arrives. So it's debatable that we are in not meeting the consent. But having said that, we're trying to do what we can to meet the 5 metre specification. And at the moment, we are monitoring it and turning over the water when we can to get the sediment out of the reservoir. Our expectation is, and I think there was probably a similar experience to the Waimea, that in the first few fills, there's probably more sediment as the reservoir fills the first time. But we expect it to get better. But when it rains, sediment comes off the land, and it always has.
So what is the risk if we don't achieve that clarity as they're part of the resource consent? What are the consequences?
I'm not aware of any significant consequence. It's a clarity issue, but we're working through that.
Okay, thank you. If there's nothing further in relation, thank you very much. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Doug, for coming in, undertaking the presentation and being available to ask questions.
I'm happy to move.
So the resolution to receive. So move Deputy Mayor Bryant, seconded Councillor Mackenzie. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Next up, we have Infrastructure Holdings Limited Group Board Review Delegations Amendment. It's a bit of a mouthful, Mike.
Through Mr. Mayor. This is a relatively straightforward matter. It's a referral from the Joint Committee. Essentially, the Joint Committee is requesting the delegated authority to act on the outcome of the Infrastructure Holdings Limited Board Review and approve any consequential changes to the shareholders agreement, the constitution or other documents. It's key for councillors to remember that the Joint Committee is a joint committee of both councils. So it's important that when the matter goes before the Joint Committee, Tasman District Council is well represented to ensure that your interests are paramount. With that, I'd have nothing further to add to the report.
Thank you very much, Mike. Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you very much through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to move. I mean, I just think this is logical, it's sensible, it's efficient, it's effective, and this is what should happen.
Thank you. It's been moved. Is there a seconder? Before I go to, I have noted Councillor Greening's hand is up. Seconded Councillor Dowler. Councillor Greening.
Yeah, I'm generally opposed to these kinds of decisions going to joint committee because it can be filibustered from either side. And I think it should come before full TDC council. There's always a risk that Nelson could push through changes that we don't agree with. When it goes to joint committee, as has been the experience with some other decisions that have gone through. So I think we need to retain our veto power over what is going to come out of that review in terms of the holding company. And so I think separation, doesn't prevent us from supporting it, but gives us the room to not support it. And so on that basis, I won't be supporting the resolution and therefore call a division. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Greening. Is there any further comment? Councillor Ellis.
Sorry, I haven't forwarded this question at this point, but I've just suddenly recalled an incident where in a joint meeting that there were issues about somebody wanting Zoom links, and are our standing orders compatible regarding the issues of being able to attend these meetings by Zoom with Nelson City Council?
Yes. Anything further? If not, can you please put the resolution by division as requested by Councillor Greening?
Deputy Mayor Bryant.
For.
Councillor Butler. For. Councillor Dakey.
For.
Councillor Dowler.
For.
Councillor Ellis. For. Councillor Greening.
Against.
Councillor Hill.
For.
Councillor Kinnunt.
For.
Councillor Mackenzie. For. Oh, what? Sorry. Councillor Mayling.
For.
Councillor Maru.
For.
Councillor Shellcrest.
For.
Councillor Walker. For. Mayor King.
For.
Thank you. Unanimous. Money.
Righto, thank you. Next up, we have the Regional Sewerage Business Unit Memorandum of Understanding. Mike. Reports in your name.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and morning, councillors. I'm going to take the report as read, and Nathan and I are here to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mayling.
Yeah, look, I'm happy to move this. This is just a renewal for 5 years, taking into account the local water's done well. We could have made it maybe shorter for 3, but this allows us to get through that process. And if we get through the process before the 5 years, if you look in the memorandum, you can terminate the agreement. So, but if Nelson City comes in with us, this will be much easier. But if they don't, well, never mind. But anyway, because the current structure, if they're not in with us, won't be able to survive. So we'll have to change it.
Okay, thank you. Is there seconder, Councillor Dowler? Is there any further comment? It's relatively machinery. If not, I'll put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Next up, we have Sewerage Business Unit Business Plan. Mike, again, over to you to introduce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So again, take the report as read and happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Richard,
there was one minor change. There's an inconsistency between the business plan and the terms of reference in reference to the council's appointments to the NRSBU. The term sheet basically says that council can appoint 2 people. One has to be an elected representative. In this case, there's 2 elected representatives. But in the business plan, it talks about 2 councillors. So there's a bit of inconsistency. So we'd probably just like to have a understanding that we'll fix up that inconsistency. It's not a major, and just adopt the business plan with that minor change.
Oh, so we need different. So next resolution. That's next resolution's on the board. Next resolution. We just need to note the amendment referred to in the resolution.
You probably put item number 3, delegates officers just to make a minor technical change to the memorandum.
We can be as agreed at the meeting with amendment as agreed at the meeting, as long as we're clear what it is and in which section, Nathan.
For the chair, if we make an amendment to this, then it'll also have to go back to the joint committee and then up to Nelson City Council. So it's a bit of a pain, from a procedural perspective. The statement that's made in the business plan is not technically correct. What it's done is it says that the current structure of the business plan and the business unit is 2 Nelson City councillors and 2 Tasman district councillors. It doesn't refer to the memorandum of understanding, which says it can be 1 councillor and 1 representative, but reflects the current structure. So it's not wrong. It doesn't. So what I would propose is for a future business plan is to write in another paragraph in advance of that, which says the MOU outlines what the structure can be or what the representatives can be, but to leave the current diagram. And so that would mean that we don't have to make any change.
Yeah, well, it sounds like a pragmatic outcome. It's slightly frustrating that it actually wasn't attended to before it went to Nelson City Council or the joint council meeting, but nevertheless, it seems like a very minor inconsistency. Thank you for raising that, Richard. That's added 5 minutes to the day. No, we're not amending the resolution on Nathan's advice. Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you very much. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Slightly off topic, I know, and if I can accept if you don't want to deal with it, but I am just a little bit curious to understand with this business unit what it means in relation to our water services delivery plan exploration of options, and if in actual fact we choose option stay as we are, or TDC CCO, or TDC and others CCO, for those three options, what does it mean with respect to this business unit? I'm not clear about that.
Richard. There's several options there. One of the options, which may end up depending on where Nelson City Council sits in the next little while with along a local water done well, is that the NRSB stays, but instead of Tasman District Council being the party, it'll be the CCO in party with Nelson City. So, I mean, that's an awkward situation, but that's probably the only practical way of dealing with it. The other way is that the CCO takes over the management of the Bell Island, and NCC becomes a co-party, but we run it and operate it. That's the other thing. So there's a whole lot of discussion around that. But at the end of the day, if Nelson City Council don't come into the CCO that we're looking to put together, the logical thing is that the arrangement will be between the CCO and Nelson City Council for this business unit.
Yeah, so I think what you meant to say is, if Nelson City are involved in the conversations about possibly having a CCO, which we haven't yet had, as opposed to the CCO we're about to create.
That's correct.
Yes, just for clarity before anyone panics. So there's quite a lot of water and wastewater to go under the bridge and through the pipe on this one before we get there. So, but yes, there are complications that will happen in a number of scenarios that we may end up having to deal with.
And maybe just a supplementary question. So, I mean, obviously for the two councils, there are some important decisions that need to be made. And how are we ensuring that councillors, either for us or for Nelson City, are fully briefed and understand the full implications of these important decisions that need to be made? How is that going to occur?
Well, as you're aware, at the moment there's a report later in this meeting on local water done well for some decision making. It's got some content in that. Things are evolving as time goes through, and we have undertaken to report to the operations committee at each of its meetings. We also have a program governance group with 4 of you on that we have been meeting, and will continue to meet as new information comes to light and as things evolve. So at this stage, that's the communication process that we're putting in place. Can also say that our comms team is over this as well, and they're preparing information all the time. You'll notice in the local newsline, there's another front page on the local waters done well. So as new information comes to light, that information will be conveyed out to the community too.
My point is really, it's important that all councillors from both councils who have to make these decisions, receive all the information, and maybe some joint discussions would be useful, as opposed to doing it in
100%. That's exactly what we've encouraged, supported, requested. Nelson City have made a decision already. They have made a decision. They've passed the council resolution to effectively go on their own. Their next step is to pass a subsequent resolution to consult their community on the decision they've already made. It does make it slightly more challenging for us to engage in that conversation, given that position. It's just something we have to work with while we remain engaged with talking with our other neighbouring councils, and those conversations are ongoing. And then I will have circulated. Did I circulate to everyone the speech from Simeon Brown, which provided some context from the government's perspective, where you can call it direction, you can call it indication, you can call it whatever you choose to take it from, but some reasonably clear intention from the government about the sort of things they would expect us to collectively consider when coming to decisions around what we do with local water done well. So we'll continue to try and engage. We'll continue to engage with Nelson City Council as they work through their consultation process. But that, I think, is the next step for them. Councillor Mailing and Councillor Walker.
I'm happy to move the resolution.
Yeah, okay, so moved and seconded, Councillor Walker.
Yeah, thank you, through you, Mayor. I hear the conversation that Councillor Mackenzie is bringing forward, but in the interim, there still needs to be a business plan for us to operate. It wouldn't be best practice for us to not put this through. And I mean, obviously, this still needs to happen. We need to operate, obviously, and until we know exactly what we're going to do and how we implement local waters done well, this is a given. We have to do it. So I was going to second it, but there you go.
Okay, all good. Yes, you're 100% correct, and I know it is slightly on a tangent. It's also important to note that even when we submit our final proposal to the DIA on the 3rd of September 2025,
It's going to be approved by then.
it has to be approved. There's then a local body election. The implementation of all of this is 2027.
At this stage, there's no fixed date that we're recommending a report later on. That we
So you have to be able to demonstrate the effect, blah, 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 by 2028 or something or other. There is a lot of time to go, even after we've decided what this council's preferred option is. The next council may well decide, once they're elected, that they have a different view, as may any of the other councils that you may choose to be in a cooperative arrangement with. So there is a lot of moving parts. So your point is entirely correct. For this foreseeable future, this business plan is still going to be needed to ensure the ongoing operation of the business unit. So it has been moved and seconded. Is there any further questions? If not, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against. Carried. Thank you very much. We can.
Because Kat's got 3 and lights here.
Okay. All right. So we will do the traffic. So we'll jump a couple of items to the traffic control bylaw. We'll then break briefly for morning tea, and then we'll come back to the other 3 bylaws that Kat is reporting on. Welcome, Mike. Over to you.
I am. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I just want to note that I've got reference to Par Street in my report, and I note that the Moutere Community Board has approved the correction of the spelling of Par Street at its 19 November meeting. Other than that, note, I'm happy to take the report as read and answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mike. It is open for questions. Councillor Dowler.
Yes, Mike, number 5.7, the new disabled car park outside the community house on Dix Reserve. Will it be a restricted disabled car parking area as per Sunday morning from 4 o'clock till 2 o'clock in the afternoon to allow the Sunday market to continue? Because if not, we'll have to go through the whole scenario of reviewing the lease situation and removing that end of the market so that people can get into that disabled car park. So I'm really worried about that. We might have opened up a can of worms, and it needs to be protected, that car park not to be used on a Sunday morning.
Correct. Yeah, I'll have to detail that. So the standard restrictions are which apply to the other time restricted and the disabled spaces midweek and part of Saturday under the traffic control rule, the legislation. So if those parking restrictions that are currently there aren't creating the market an issue, then this one won't add to that. But that might be something we need to confirm.
So for clarification, all the parking restrictions apply weekdays within certain hours and Saturday morning, and none of the parking restrictions. That's what I'm trying to understand, because Barry's point is you're both correct. There are other time restrictions in relation to, I guess, the parking in Dex Reserve, are there, or are there not?
There are. Yeah, that's correct.
That don't apply on Sunday.
But I'd have to actually read the legislation to confirm the exact time frame when the standard parking restrictions apply, and you might have actually identified a clash that we need to resolve.
Oh, good point, Barry. But it does beg a bit of a question about the approval of this. If we're unclear what the implications are, particularly for that, we have two options. We can either not approve the whole thing, or we could take that particular bit out while you clarify the implications. I mean, there must be a way around this, because lots of markets operate in lots of car parks without the car parking restrictions providing an impediment. And I can't imagine that one single disabled car park would change that. But we do need to be very clear that that is the case.
Well, the leasee actually allows those two disabled car parks at the northern end for use on the Sunday for disabled people to come in and park there. She actually configures the market around it, so there are two disabled car parks available. But I just hate to think that people think they can go and be able to drive through to this new one when there's a coffee car parked exactly across there.
It'd be my preference to do some investigation on that and come back with that, because this, and correct any of the other parking restrictions in the wider car park if it's necessary.
So do you want to just put the whole item off until you clarify that, or do you want to take out the particular item that relates to the Dex Reserve?
My preference is to take it out. And
okay, and can proceed with the rest of the. Okay. Yeah. Oh, we'll come back. Yes, we will need to include it in the resolution as the. Right.
Thank you. Mayor King, just wait to Mike's.
So just for clarity, we have another meeting on the 11th of December. So hopefully between now and then we should be able to come back to it. So
my question relates to School Street, Church Street, where there was some divided opinion over how well that's working, and you're pressing ahead with having the closures. Does that still provide access for the church on the hill for funerals, and how will that work in practice?
It does, yeah. It's just the one-way section of Church Street midweek on school days is closed, so the access to the church would be via the other section of Church Street.
So there is an alternative 24/7, is there?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Ellis.
Thank you. Further to that Church Street closure, I'm just checking one of the submissions against it was to do with the getting out of Church Street, which is challenging, and I appreciate that it is on a state highway. Is there anything we can do to help that issue of getting out of there? I mean, as they said, even just turning left to come round towards town can be very tricky. So, and turning right, I wouldn't even attempt to do it. So can we, there's not a lot of space here. We can't really do anything to mitigate that, can we?
No, nothing comes to mind. You've got high traffic volume. You know it can be difficult to make those turns.
Okay, so Richard and Mike's preference is to, so assuming the only real issue most people are comfortable with what else is contained within the report, but this issue around Moutere, so the preference is to leave the whole issue to lie on the table, bring it back for confirmation once we've had a chance to look at it more closely on the 11th of December. So I just need a resolution to leave this item lie on the table. Councillor Walker, seconded Councillor Mailing. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. We'll now break for 10 minutes-ish and come back. And next up, we'll have the bylaw conversation led by Kat. So we'll reconvene the meeting, and next up we have the draft public water supply bylaw. Kat, welcome, and associated team of support people. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the report is to provide the recommendations from the Public Water Supply Bylaw Hearings and Deliberations panel to the Council. This is a current bylaw that's being reviewed. The deliberations panel consisted of Councillors Hill, who was the chair, Councillor Dowler, Alice, and Deputy Mayor Stuart Bryant. We publicly consulted on the bylaw between the 26th and the 20th of July and the 27th of August, and during that time we received 8 submissions. Staff recommended a number of quite minor changes to the bylaw in response to the submissions, and these were generally just around providing further clarity and such as the inclusion of some definitions or adjusting the language to better communicate the intent. So there was a joint hearings and deliberations meeting held on the 15th of October. However, the one speaker that was scheduled was unable to attend. The hearings and deliberations panel received and accepted the recommendations of the staff and are recommending that the council makes the bylaw. We'd also at this time like to thank the bylaw for their attention to detail and their diligence during the process.
Okay, thank you. So Deputy Mayor Bryant.
So I'd just like to thank Kat and the team for the work they've done, getting us to a good place on this, and it will be better and reviewed in 10 years' time, so that really pleases me. I'm happy to move the resolutions around this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Seconded Councillor Dowler, and I've got Councillor Greening with question or comment. Mark.
Yeah, it's just in relation to clause 22, 3, relating to disconnection. You know, I think I've raised this matter with Richard earlier. The wording uses the word "if the council approves," which to me holds an element of discretion, which I think is inappropriate given that it's indicating some conditions to be met, but it doesn't actually indicate clearly that council's approval for disconnection should not be unreasonably withheld. So with leave the chair, I would suggest, and staff may want to comment, perhaps adding a clause 22.6 with the words council's approval for disconnection should not be unreasonably withheld, just to clarify that it's not an open-ended discretion.
Thank you, Councillor Greening. Mike.
For you, Mr. Mayor, we actually took legal advice on this several years ago following a request to disconnect at Dovedale, and we cannot legally stop people disconnecting, but we can have conditions such as recovering the costs of disconnection.
So Councillor Greening's suggestion of adding a clause which adding a section which says will not be unreasonably withheld is probably actually
consistent and useful.
Legally, might be some other wording, but yeah.
Okay.
Through the Mayor, we did seek some legal advice just quickly this morning when we received the email around it. So there are some other examples, such as in section 15 and 16, different parts of the bylaw that require council approval before carrying out a particular activity. And we haven't spelt out in any of those sections that we wouldn't unreasonably withhold that service. So our advice at this stage is to retain the status quo, just to have a consistent approach.
Is the other consistent approach just to add the same wording after the other things? I mean, it does seem that to reduce the ambiguity, given the fact that we actually can't, then it doesn't, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, so I don't delve into much legal technicalities. It seems pretty bloody simple to me. So
maybe through you, Mr. Chair, if I could just add a comment for Jenny. So I think in this part, it's sort of explaining a process. So if in this part of the process this happens, then this will occur. So it's not so much talking about the council making the decision or not. It's just saying if this part of the process occurs, then this follows. And then for the next part, might be able to.
So can someone explain to me the downside of you putting this wording in? Just explain very quickly.
Through Mayor, I don't think there is a big downside. It is probably unnecessary, and I think Kim was trying to say that it's a process-related matter as opposed to whether you can disconnect or not. But there's little harm in adding it.
Jenny,
I wouldn't suggest adding watering down council's powers through this bylaw. It's a significant bylaw dealing with water supply networks. So adding into every clause where we've got you must need written approval from council, that it mustn't be unreasonably withheld, would water down those controls that we're putting in place. But I agree with what Kim's saying, that the way this is worded is that, you know, if approval's given, and we've already had advice that we can't unreasonably withhold approval, the conditions are attached to that, which are set out in that clause, subclause 3, what must happen in that process. So I don't think it's saying the council won't approve, it's just that if approval is given.
Yeah. I'm so confused. So, Councillor Green, I take it you're suggesting an amendment.
Yeah, I'm going to move an amendment.
Is there a seconder for the amendment?
Yeah.
Councillor Walker.
Fantastic.
Debating on the amendment. Any debate? I'll put the amendment. All those in favour, please say aye.
Should the amendment be put on screen for the benefit of anyone online?
It's up there. It's passed. Moving on.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Right. Anything further in terms of questions? Has been moved. Deputy Mayor Bryant seconded. Councillor Dowler. As amended. Becomes a resolution. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Next up, draft public places bylaw.
Okay, so carrying on, this report's to provide the recommendations from the Public Places Bylaw Hearings and Deliberations panel to the council, and this panel consisted again of Councillor Hill as the chair, Councillor Dakey, Mackenzie, Walker, and Kinnamonth, who was an apology on the day. We publicly consulted on the bylaw again between 26th of July and 27th of August, and during this time we received 35 submissions. Hearings were held on the 23rd of September and deliberations on the 15th of October. Staff have recommended several changes, both in response to the submissions and based on staff advice to improve the bylaw. Notably, the requirement for clear, unobstructed footpath in both the sandwich board and the outdoor dining sections was reduced from 2 metres to 1.8 metres, and this is to align with what was adopted by Nelson City Council and the recommendations from both Blind Low Vision New Zealand and also what's set out in the NZTA RTS 14 guidelines for facilities for blind and vision impaired pedestrians. Provisions for exemptions under certain circumstances were also added to the outdoor dining and sandwich board sections as well to allow for a more pragmatic approach. And once again, we'd just like to thank the panel for their commitment and thoughtful consideration given to the submissions and the content of the bylaw during that process. Yes.
Thank you. Thanks, Kat. Open for moving and seconding comments or questions. Councillor Dakey.
Yeah, happy to move this. Big thanks to the staff. Thank you for the way you worked with the community and went out early and engaged with stakeholders on some of the challenging issues. And we've arrived at a document that is common sense and reflects the reality of what you can actually enforce. So I actually think it's a good result and very happy to support it.
Thank you, Councillor Dakey. Is there a seconder? Councillor Mackenzie and Councillor Greening.
2 seconders, or am I speaking? Just want to speak to 2 clauses, clause 11 and 10 of the policy, and I certainly welcome the comment made earlier about sandwich board consistency with Nelson, so that's very welcome. I'm sure businesses would welcome that as well. And in relation to clause 11, the footpath retail displays, I'm just wondering, in Richmond recently, we've had a chap drawing on the footpath and requiring people to step around it. So I'm just wondering how drawing on the footpath or that people have to walk around is treated. Is that signage or busking, is drawing on the footpath performance or advertising? And just noting that clause 11.1 really does focus on retail display focus as opposed to advertising. So is advertising included in that retail display focus, or should clause 11 include advertising as well as retail displays? That's my first question.
Thank you, Councillor Greening, Kat or Wayne.
Through the Mayor, having chalk drawings wasn't particularly considered during the drafting of this bylaw. However, I will note that the purpose behind a lot of these regulations is to support accessibility in the community and making sure that we don't have obstructions in the public place, on the footpath. Sorry. So I would consider that the chalk drawings wouldn't represent an obstruction or something that could be tripped over by someone who is vision impaired.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. So I just want to show that because I mean, in the incident I saw, people had to walk around it because I think he was using sand or something and didn't want people disrupting it, and obviously that then created a little bit of a crowd to look at it, which I would have thought would be very similar to the busking example, and therefore is creating obstruction. And then my other concern was around we're okay with people using our footpaths for advertising.
Question?
I think it's a question.
I think Kat has outlined the primary concerns behind the controls of retail displays on the footpath. To the extent that someone using the footpath created an obstruction, there is actually, I think, and I would need to double check, but general provision around obstructing roadways and road reserves. And I think we would probably be able to come under that if it genuinely created an obstruction that was difficult for people to navigate or a hazard to others. So at this point, I think making an ad hoc change to the bylaw would, at least from a staff perspective, be unwarranted.
Yep. No, look, I think that's. I mean, it's a good question because ultimately it's the purpose of the bylaw, and then there's a whole lot of other activities that, while we may like or dislike or agree or disagree, aren't the purpose of the bylaw, and trying to cover those might not be appropriate. Councillor Greening.
Yeah. So I was just trying to get clarity around interpretation because I think, and staff may want to correct me or agree with me, that someone doing painting on the footpath would be considered a performance and therefore fall within busking provisions. Other people might dispute that and say it's not entertainment. But anyway, and therefore get outside any regulation. But anyway, I'll move on. This brings me to clause 10, which is the busking. And I appreciate TDC is taking a permitted activity approach to this. I kind of always favoured a licensing approach, but either way, it lands. I still think that licensing is a better way to regulate unwanted behaviour, especially repeat behaviour. But anyway, I did have 3 suggestions to staff. I'm really going to focus on one of them. I think I've suggested some rewording of 10.1 and A, a bit more explicit, but consolidated. And maybe that's for a future version for staff to take on board. I'm not going to labour that one, but I'm going to labour what I call a retail power. And I'm responding to submissions made, submitter 33954 and some related submissions around the ability for retailers to have input. And I noticed in the discussion, and it was acknowledged in the hearing, at least in the recorded report, that there was a suggestion that some of the non-compliance was a little bit subjective, and probably could be hard to enforce. not to say that it can't be enforced, but you're always working in grey areas in some instances. So I do wonder whether a simpler self-regulating approach would be useful and give the retail shops the ability not to prevent busking, but to move buskers on. And so I would suggest adding a clause 10(2)(a) along the lines of, if a street performer is performing immediately outside a retail premises and is asked by the retailer to move on, they must do so at least 50 metres from where they were performing, or as directed by an authorised officer, which I think is reasonable and fair. So I'll be suggesting moving that addition. I also raised the question of TDC's discretionary power, and I note that that has been removed. But I do wonder whether, if the discretion is constrained to performance locations, that it gives us room to control maybe some instances we don't require or don't approve of, repeat offenders, or just gives us flexibility in making sure that certain locations during certain times of the year are relatively clear. And so I wonder whether, and this is a discretion, so TDC doesn't have to use it, but it's got it in its pocket if it needs it. And what I've suggested here is adding a discretionary power along the lines of performance sites may move, be temporarily unavailable, or permanently removed at council's discretion. I think this is useful. I'm not going to die in a ditch over it, but I'd be interested to know whether the staff think that maybe the discretion would be useful in terms of location.
Thank you, Councillor Greening. I will put that suggestion to the staff. So, Kat, Lane, do you have any feedback on Councillor Greening's suggestion around performance locations?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can start with addressing the business permission clause, or the suggestion to enable businesses to require a busker to move on. So that was something that was previously discussed during the drafting process, and staff ultimately decided not to include or to exclude a similar clause that we did originally have in there, because it would essentially give members of the public powers to enforce the bylaw, and we would suggest that the responsibility remains with the council. We advise against including new clauses that haven't been consulted on, and this could be considered a significant change that might warrant a second consultation. With regards to the discretionary powers, I am a little confused because no changes have been made to that section in the deliberations. So I'm not sure which clause had been removed.
Oh, okay.
However, those points could consider to be adequately covered by the clauses 10.2 and 10.3. An authorised officer or police officer may require any busker who is not complying with the provisions of this bylaw to cease busking. And there's another one around requesting them to relocate at least 100 metres if they're causing a disturbance. And the clauses above there are relatively broad to enable that to happen where there is an issue. So,
okay, thanks, Kat. That's a good explanation. Mark, does that satisfy your concern or nay?
Yeah, so discretionary powers. I do think that the retailer provision, which was originally there and which has been removed and was discussed in hearings, is not something we need to reconsult on because it was discussed in submission. So I'm suggesting that that provision is either put back in or put in as I've described it. I don't see it as giving authority for someone to create the rules. They're merely we're giving the retailer the authority to request that they move on. If the person doesn't move on, then there's the alternative, which is as directed by an authorised officer.
So I think we're very clear on your perspective, Mark. So you have two options. You've received this feedback from staff. You could choose to move an amendment and look for a seconder. Alternatively, we'll just move on.
Yeah, so I'm putting it forward as an amendment, and I seek a seconder.
Is there a seconder for that amendment? It would appear there is not. So we'll now move on. Councillor Butler.
Thank you, through you, Mayor.
Yeah, thanks for the work on this bylaw. And I think it's really, it's just another thing in the toolkit. You know, over in Golden Bay, Takaka, we have mayhem on our streets at times, and it just means that if necessary, this can be pulled out. So that is what I would see as the purpose of it. So my question, oh yeah, I just wanted to make the point that in some situations, I don't know if it exists elsewhere, but there are sandwich boards on private property. There are, you know, they look, private property appears to be part of the footpath, but actually it's just outside a shop. So we do have situations with that. So the other thing is just about compliance and how that is actually going to be achieved if it's needed in our more remote communities. And I think that's probably rests with regulatory. But I'm just wondering if that was actually considered or looked at all as to how we would do that. You know, there's compliance officers, there's police, there's who else? Sure. Individuals, councillors saying, you know, you're not allowed to do that.
Kat.
Thank you. It was the compliance aspect was considered, and under this bylaw, I guess it really depends on what the offence is as to who would be responding. Our regulatory team have also acknowledged that they are stretched relatively thin, and so the compliance or the enforcement element of this would likely take on a reactive approach in responding to issues as they arose rather than a proactive. However, in saying that, there will be some education. We will be notifying various stakeholders about the bylaw coming into force as well to make sure that everyone's on the same page. Thanks. Thank you, Kat.
Okay, thank you. So it's been moved and seconded. Look, again, I'd just like to thank both the staff who've been involved in this and I think it is a pragmatic approach to the issue. Retailing is phenomenally challenging, as I guess everyone kind of understands these days. Having vibrant, occupied central parts to our towns is crucially important. So obviously mitigating and managing the issues on footpaths and access is also important. And so I think this bylaw does strike a really good balance. I think things like chalk drawings on footpaths and stuff should be encouraged. I mean, the more stuff like that, and busking, again, within reason and, you know, of a reasonable quality, and not just really annoying someone with the violin who can't play. But those sort of things I actually think add greatly to the kind of atmosphere in the central parts of the towns across the region. So I think we should encourage that sort of activity. And, you know, there are some phenomenally cool, anyone who ever spent any time on the internet will be able to see there's some phenomenally cool chalk drawings on footpaths and streets. And it's a genuine art form and it provides a lot of really good, you know, stuff for people to enjoy. So I think the more we can utilise things where it doesn't have any adverse impact, doesn't impact on people's access or otherwise, that's to be encouraged. So with that, I will put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Next up, Kat, the cat management bylaw. So happy day. So again, this has been through quite a process, and again, thanks to all those who have been involved. Potentially a very emotive topic, probably close to or nearly close to behind the dog control bylaw. So as soon as we start talking cats and dogs, we tend to generate a fair bit of conversation and feedback, and quite often some quite strongly opposed views. So to everyone who's been involved, again, coming to a kind of practical approach to address what is a very significant issue. So I'll hand over to Kat to introduce this item.
Thank you. Once again, the purpose of this report is to provide the recommendations of the cat management bylaw hearings and deliberations panel regarding the cat management bylaw. The hearings panel consisted of the chair, Councillor Hill, Deputy Mayor Stuart Bryant, and Councillors Alice, Mackenzie and Maru. We publicly consulted on the bylaw between 26th of July and 27th of August, and during this time we received 154 submissions. The hearings were held on the 24th of September and deliberations again on the 15th of October. The proposed bylaw was widely supported in the submissions, with over 89% supporting the microchipping requirement, over 86% supporting the registration requirement, and over 88% supporting the desexing requirement. In response to submissions, staff recommended a change to the transition period for existing cat owners, reducing that from June 2027 to June 2026. Staff are recommending that other issues that were raised in the free text feedback, such as cat containment or curfews, the limiting of cat numbers per household, and also the feeding of colony cats, to be reassessed when the bylaw is reviewed, which will be within 5 years as a new bylaw. The hearings and deliberations panel received and accepted the recommendations of staff and are recommending that the council makes the bylaw. And once again, we would like to thank the panel for their dedication and thoughtful attention they've given to the submissions and the content of the bylaw.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor Butler.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to move the resolution. And it sort of wasn't fought, Mr. Mayor. It was so overwhelmingly supported that it was actually great to see that feedback from the community. And look, I'd like to particularly mention a former TDC employee as well, whose name just went completely out of my mind. Paul Sheldon, who actually, did a lot of work on this actually in my first term of council when we did try to get this across the line. So thank you, everybody currently, but also Paul, thank you as well. It's much appreciated.
Yeah, very worthwhile acknowledgement. Certainly something I'm sure Paul would be very happy with, that we're getting to this point, should it be passed in due course. Councillor Butler, then Councillor Walker.
Thank you. Yeah, I just remember when we tried to pass the first cat bylaw and it got voted down, and Councillor Mackenzie said, "What happened there?" But we're in a different space now, so I'm happy to second it and acknowledge that it dovetails in with the regional pest management plan cat roles as well. So
thank you for noting it, Councillor Walker. And we have not yet seconded, should you be inclined to do so.
I would not be seconding it, no. I was one of the ones that voted it down in 2019, and I grapple with the resources that have gone behind this said bylaw and what it will achieve and how we will implement any enforcement of it. When we have people in public forum talking about housing, we give that very little airtime, and the cat bylaw got copious amounts. So for all those people who support it, good on you, but I'm voting against.
Just for clarity, my bad. Councillor Kinnamon. Oh, did you? Sorry, my apologies, Councillor Butler's already seconded it too. It's all good.
So you wouldn't have to.
Right. Thank you. Is there any further commentary? Yeah, I mean, I guess like many things, timing is everything. And very clearly, Councillor Mackenzie has highlighted the fact that whether it would have been the same 3 years ago, I don't know. But certainly this time, overwhelming. And there's been a huge amount of publicity, information, very public. Country Calendar was a couple of weeks ago, highlighted the issue. He was shooting a feral cat. So just so we're all very clear, there is a fundamental difference between pet moggies and the feral population of cats, which is a phenomenally large problem for native wildlife and biodiversity. So whichever way you cut that, timing is everything, and it has been extremely well supported through the submission process. And again, it's trying to strike a pragmatic approach to a challenging issue. And strike the balance between council's resources and the challenges around enforcement, and hence the suggestion for the registration to be through the companion animal register, not a council constructed registration process, etc., etc. So again, thanks to everyone who's been involved, and I will now put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? And would you like your vote recorded? Noted. Thank you very much. Right, we are now, so we've done that one, that's lying on the table. Local water done well, service delivery options. Welcome, Richard. Oh, wait,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got Jeff Robinson here, just in case there's some technical.
Welcome, Jeff.
So I take the report as read, and basically the decisions today is largely adopting three of the options that the local water's done well in terms of models, and discounting two options related to the trusts, and the rest are notes. Can I also add that there's new information come to light? You will notice the Minister on Thursday announced that all the water users are going to be paying for the Commerce Commission as the regulator, economic regulator, and Taumata Arawai as the water regulator. The fees that have come through, there's two documents from MB. The first document is the Taumata Arawai one, which is a fact sheet. They have to recover 20.6 million across the country a year, and our council will be up for about 250,000 of that. Commerce Commission, 6.5 million a year based on population. We're 1.2% population, so that's 75,000. So that totals 325,000 that will be levied on the three waters within Tasman district, on top of everything else. So just put that information out there. So that's new information. Councillor Mackenzie asked today, when are we going to be informed of stuff? I'm just informing you, that's hot off the press. We received this yesterday. Well, the Mayor received it, the documents, and I quickly downloaded them and had a read through, and it is scary. The Commerce Commission one actually has all the councils in the back and all the paying rates they have to pay. And they're actually collecting, as I said, 6.5 million out of a population of 5 million. So, yeah. Otherwise, I'll take the report as read and open to questions.
Thank you. I'll just touch on that because it is interesting that Simeon Brown prefaced this in his speech at the local government meeting the other day. And in doing so said, don't worry, it's going to be a very minor amount or a very small amount. And I think what it highlights is the mismatch between what central government sees as a very minor amount and the implications for councils of those same amounts. And yeah, that is one of the things that we grapple with. I'm sure it is a very minor amount to central government. $250,000 barely blinks. MP's salary plus expenses, probably about that amount. But for us, that's a significant component of our water's budget. And for us, it's an implication for smaller councils. I'm sure it'll be equally challenging because any cost increases that are not directly related to service delivery and physical infrastructure pose real challenges. So I guess it's out for consultation, is it, Richard? That's why they're sending to us. They're asking us for our views on the amount and the process.
And there's some interesting questions in there too, and I'm not sure how we could answer them. So
right. We'll work through that in due course, but yeah, it is, I would have thought, not an insignificant amount. Right, open to further questions on the balance of the report. If you can move on from the recent announcement.
No, I can't move on from that, actually. So interestingly enough, just so I can lock in that 325,000, how many users have we got?
It'll vary between water and wastewater.
Yeah,
it won't be the same number.
Not the same number. I think we're talking about 19 or 20,000. Yeah, so 50% of our population is about 25,000. Yeah.
Good to know.
That's the population. Then there'll be the number of connections, which will be different again, because obviously one connection, might be half that again in terms of connections ish.
Yeah, and one of the documents, remember which one it is, does break it down to the Taumata Arawai one. They reckon it's $1.30 per person, the population. So for our 50,000 people, there you go. And I'll book half
The
of
old
those. That's
classic cup of
$2.60.
coffee analogy.
It's exactly.
Righto. Excellent. We weren't actually here to discuss this topic, so
No, that's
we
the
do need to
information.
discuss the balance Richard's report, and we will circulate said information for councillors. So
I can
you'll
get that
get
circulated. It's actually on the MB website. It was actually links sent through to you and your email yesterday. So yeah,
I haven't had the joy of seeing it yet.
that's right.
Councillor Mackenzie, do you have anything further before I come to Councillor Ellis and then Councillor Greening?
No, to be honest, I'm pretty happy to move it, which I will move. I guess my question would be, you know, I agree with discounting option 4 and 5. And then the question comes down to option 1, 2, and 3. Is there any way that we can make it simpler on ourselves? I mean, I note in the paper, you kind of mentioned you think that the budget that we've got, which by and large has come from central government anyway, that the budget we've got, you think will cover all the work. I certainly don't want to find ourselves in a situation where we've still got a whole lot of work to do and we've spent the money and we need to allocate more ratepayer money into it. So are you confident that we can get this work done within the resources we've got if we pursue a business case for those 3 options?
At this stage, yes, we can. Can I say I met with Buller and Marlborough Jeff and I went down and met them on Tuesday, and we've got 2 tranches of work got going. One of them is the financial work around the combined one with the 3 councils, and we're looking to get that completed by Christmas. So we'll have in the January some idea of what would look like going combined with the 3 councils versus us going alone each. And the initial figures that we've seen look quite favourable about going combined over the longer term. But that's a bit of work that we want to get underway straight away so that we've got some sort of idea of where we're heading by the time you meet in February to look at these. The other tranche of work is to get a terms of reference put in place that we would like to come back, each of us, to our councils in terms of, if we go for a CCO, some sort of commitment and with off ramps and everything, so that, you know, we're not halfway down the track and so, oh, I'm out of it at this point. So some commitment to actually progress through to certain stepping stones for councils to make decisions. So we're developing that as well at this point in time.
So I guess, so with that early look at the financial information, and you're saying that it's looking positive, and I'm assuming beneficial from a financial perspective to work with those 2 other councils, does that mean it would even be more beneficial for us to work with Nelson City, and that it might be beneficial for Nelson City to work with us? I mean, could I assume that from what you're saying?
You could assume that, but the figures that I've seen don't include Nelson's. I'm not sure where they're at. Can I just say that the way the combined one is worked out is on the basis that the levels of service within each of the councils will stay the same. The savings are actually in the overheads and managing it all and the staffing over the top. That's where the major savings are. In terms of on the ground service delivery, that's just assumed that everything stays the same. So the theory being, and I think it's quite common around, is when you form a CCO like this, you don't harmonise everything day one. It's over about 2 to 3, 4, 5 years, and that's in discussions with the council. So all that information is just based on the current levels of service and the potential savings made with economies of scale by having a larger entity, particularly with the overheads and the like.
Which I think is very consistent with what was on Mr. Simeon Brown's press release, where he talked about the benefits of amalgamating. So.
Indeed. Thank you, Councillor Ellison and Councillor Green.
Thank you, Mayor. I think my questions have already been answered, but just to point back to your wee announcement just beforehand, I'm curious as to how those extra costs would figure into any potential rate caps that we may have, because it could equate to a 0.25 or 0.3 rate rise. So
I suppose
mind into the future, isn't it?
That's where the Commerce Commission comes in, because if you have a CCO, it's not affecting rates at all. Your rates can be cut right out. This is just going to be more what prices we charge the users. And that's where the Commerce Commission comes in to make sure that we're not price gouging and that we're buying pre-price.
The government has indicated there's a whole lot of conversation to go around rates, revenue capping, options. Clearly, it's something they're considering very seriously. they're also considering exempting certain activities to encourage you to invest in certain things and discourage you potentially from investing in others. So there's a lot of conversation to go before that lands, but absolutely that conversation encourages you to consider separate entities because they may not be or will not be captured by the rates cap. Then the other, setting aside the cost of paying for Taumata Arawai and the Commerce Commission, as Richard has outlined, which is not insignificant, the other very new thing for councils will be having an economic regulator with the power to set charges for you. So in the presentation the other day, and I can't remember the exact term, I think it's price path, that the Commerce Commission uses to effectively set prices for other sectors. That terminology came up multiple times in the presentation from the Commerce Commission representatives at the meeting in Wellington. So I think you can, it's a very different world for councils to operate in, regardless of whether you end up in a CCO, whether you stay on your own, whether you can have an internal business unit. Those two other parties, Taumata Arawai through their standards and regulations, and the Commerce Commission through their ability to effectively set prices, will have a massive say in both your investment cost and what you can charge. So regardless of which options you go down, there's going to be a lot of other people in effect making decisions or certainly affecting the decisions that you make going forward over the next 3 years plus.
Just maybe there's one other thing. There's one other thing I just comment on too is the CCO and the long LGFA and what they lend. They've given an indication with CCOs that you can lend up to 500% of your what they call a FFO, which is your operating costs. We found out the other day that if the council goes alone with CCO, it may not experience that. It's up to that 500%. So if you have a regional one, you're more likely to get the 500% than going alone. I found that quite an interesting sort of a fact because I think many councils going alone and forming their own CCO think they're going to get the 500%. And I understand that may not be the case.
I think the other crucial thing with the LGFA funding is you must guarantor or issue uncalled capital. So again, this is a complication or key component that doesn't fully insulate the council or the ratepayer from the consequences of the decisions made through these processes because of that underlying guarantor or uncalled capital situation. And it's yet to be determined quite how that plays out in terms of balance sheet separation, the approach that the rating agencies will make when they're assessing the connection between any entity, joint or separate, and how it relates to council's debt and the obligations on ratepayers. So there is an awful lot yet to play out through this process. So, and ultimately, the same group of people, in our situation particularly, given we already have a PAN charge and water metering and closed accounts, the same group of people are going to be paying the bills. And if we borrow 500%, and the Commerce Commission sets the thing, and Taumata Arawai sets the regulations, that group of people are going to be paying the bills, whether it's to us or to another entity, same people. So that also needs to be kept very clearly in mind as we go forward. Councillor Greening.
Sorry, just pushed the wrong button. There we go. I'm probably going to move a different motion, given the other one hasn't been seconded. And my motion is to adopt the Nelson approach, which is basically to approve the current internal business unit option 1, for the service delivery of water services done well, and then approve not progressing the other 4 options outlined in the resolution. So that's what I'm going to move. No doubt Mackenzie is waiting for a seconder, and now I am also waiting for a seconder.
So I'll take those in order, and I will take your motion as a foreshadowing, should this one not be seconded.
Well, the other one hasn't been seconded, that's all.
Yeah, so I'm just taking them in order in which they were moved, because you are correct. So Councillor Mailing has seconded Councillor Mackenzie's resolution. And the effect that it does not pass, then obviously
now you change my position now, and I have to foreshadow. But it wasn't moved, so and
it was moved.
There was an
just to be
opportunity
clear,
for it to be moved.
Just to be clear, it was moved. So
it wasn't seconded though, so it wasn't moved.
It wasn't. No.
Yes.
So
yeah. Anyway, okay, you've set that up. Fantastic. I now am foreshadowing the change. I don't believe that we should be doing anything other than what Nelson is. At the end of the day, Nelson Council will be our principal body. Should we go down that CCO model? I'm not actually convinced a CCO model adds any advantage to us based on looking across the experiences of other players in the local government sector who have used them. And for some of them, it has been a complete disaster. The savings never materialise. The airport and port holding company has shown that. Rather, debt goes up. And I suspect that the CCO model will just enable more debt for ratepayers to service. And we don't need any more debt, and therefore we don't need these other models. So I will now be voting against the motion, and I'll call a division for the reasons that I've just outlined. Thank you.
Thank you. So you've made one statement, which I just want Councillor, Mike to clarify. So you made the statement that the holding company has achieved no savings, no benefits. So
it's taken all the savings out from debt.
So I just want to come across to get that clarified. Mike?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. No, there have been savings through the formation of Infrastructure Holdings Limited. Their cost of borrowing is down significantly on what it would be if they had retained the bank borrowing in the old structure.
Thank you.
Debt has gone up.
Can I just comment on the foreshadowed resolution? To go to consultation, we do have to go out with two options. We've got to compare them. So you can't just decide to choose one. I don't know how Nelson's getting across that, but at this point in time, if you, it's actually ultra virus just to say we're going to go with one option, you have to go with two to actually do a comparison.
Okay, thank you. Other speakers, Councillor Kinnamoth.
No, I was just going to comment on what Mr. Kirby said. That I thought there was two options, not just one, and I don't support the Mark Greenie conversations at all.
Thank you, Councillor Butler, Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you. My question is in relation to the option 3, the multi-council owned water organisation, and my question is, can we be confident that there would be enough separation between those councils and the company? Because, there could be some unknown risks about engaging and working with other councils, that there could be some liabilities that we don't know about. I mean, that would come down to due diligence. I understand that. But, in my mind, my question is, would the separation between the councils and the company be sufficient to insulate from maybe financial problems or something that might exist in the other councils?
The combined, as I just said earlier, the combined CCO would still operate like 3 separate councils, but with under the one unit. And so any specific challenges within an individual council, the CCO would still have to deal with that within that council and liaise with it. The CCO would have service level agreements with each of the councils, so that if there's any kind of major concerns in a particular area, we'd go back to the councils and say, listen, this is a situation here. This is what's going to happen to your water users or your wastewater users as a result of that. So those sort of aspects, those risks will be transferred to the CCO, and they will deal directly with the 3 councils in that space. Can I say the discussion on Tuesday, we did discuss the challenges each of the councils were having. And so we're aware of what each of the councils, what their challenges are. And some of them, I have to say, are reasonable. probably not as big a challenge as, our challenge is probably not as big as one or two of these. So that is something the CCO would have to cover off with those two councils, yeah.
Thank you. Councillor McKenzie and then Councillor Walker.
Thank you very much. I mean, I guess we need to be clear that we're not making a decision about going with option 1 or option 2 or option 3. What we're actually making a decision about is actually what is going to be the scope of our indicative business case, because it's actually the business case that enables us as a council to make a robust, good decision. And so what we're really deciding here is the scope of the business case, and for reasons that are outlined in the paper, we're discounting options 4 and 5, which I think is reasonable, but we're not making a decision about any of the others. It's putting ourselves in a position where we can make a good decision.
Yeah, that's very good clarification in terms of today's resolution. Councillor Walker.
Yeah, thank you, through me. It's my comments endorse pretty much where Councillor McKenzie's coming from. This is an ever-moving feast. We don't have a crystal ball to gaze in to understand. In fact, we have limited clarity of exactly what's going to come out of Wellington, and it is the business case scopes that we need to look at to make decisions. So until we have more information, it's very hard to make a decision, but happy to opt out of option 4 and 5 at this stage.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Councillor Butler. No, oh, all good. Councillor Greening.
Based on Mr. Kirby's advice, which is I can't put one single option forward, I have to foreshadow then that I don't support the multi-council owned water organisation and would seek to if there has to be a counter proposal, the Consumer Trust owned water organisation is the counter proposal. But I would be intrigued to know how Nelson has managed to only approve one option and sink all the others.
We'd all be intrigued to know, but that's a decision for them.
So if they're doing it, I can't see why we can't.
Again, their decision, their process. We have a different approach, and I guess that's what we're deciding today.
Right. So,
Councillor Murray.
You sort of preempted Mr. Mayor because I was going to repeat what Councillor McKenzie said, but I understand why we're not going in the consumer trust organisation. I would have liked to have seen that model, but I get the funding model and it's not going to work. And to Councillor Walker and Councillor McKenzie's point, is the business case is the process to give us the information and the community to make submissions and have their say on what our water looks like in years to come.
Can I just also comment at this point in time, your note in item, which one was it here? Item 10, at this stage we're planning to kick this off on the 1st of July 2027 to align with the next long-term plan. We discussed that with the other two councils. They thought that was a logical thing to do as well. So essentially you've got 2.5 years to implement something, even though we have to have the water supply delivery plan approved and signed off by the 3rd of September next year.
And there's a local government election and a national government election in between all of those things. And so, coming back to Councillor Walker's point, moving feast, lots of stuff up in the air. Best endeavours working towards trying to get as much information as I think the phase we're in is trying to get as much information as Councillor McKenzie and Councillor Murray both said to make an informed decision about which of these we may progress further and which two we may ultimately consult with the community on. Coming back to Councillor Greening's earlier point about not wanting more debt, I think the key thing to bear in mind is the way things are heading in terms of the role of Taumata Arawai and the role of the Commerce Commission. Those decisions are not going to be entirely with or whatever entity you create, whether that's in-house, own CEO or collective. Those two parties are going to have a very significant influence on the investment decisions and what you charge. And that's a very new space for everyone to be in. And I don't think anyone's very clear exactly how that model will work and how that's going to roll out and over what time frame. But it is very clear that they are both, and you can see that from the amount that they are both costing, hence the amount that we are being charged for their services, that they're clearly not going to be sitting there doing nothing. They are going to have significant influence. And through that, there is a significant liability coming back through those processes, particularly to council staff who are involved in providing us advice around those decisions about investment, operation, and meeting the standards. And if you've been following the recent decision that was made on the health and safety legislation in relation to Ports of Auckland, you cannot dismiss the liability that sits, whether it's with us as governors or with council staff who are responsible for providing us the advice. You just have to be cognizant that that is a significant liability and responsibility that they carry through the legislation. And when they're recommending investment, and whether that's debt or operational cost, we have to be very clear that that is the world we're moving into. And how we've done things in the past, regardless of whether we believe it's been, good, average, not so good, is not the way that we're going to be able to operate in the future. Richard, and I'll come to Mark, and then I'll put the resolution.
Just number 11 is just a catch-all really with the Water Services Bill number 3, which is likely to go out to consultation, they believe, beginning of December, which is next week. In case the submission closing date doesn't align with our council meetings, we're just requesting perhaps delegated authority to the Mayor Chief Executive to sign off a submission on that basis. And no doubt councillors will be consulted on that before we send it in.
Thank you. Councillor Greening, and then I'll put the resolution, which will be called by division, as requested by Councillor Greening.
Yeah. I just add to the logic of what's been proposed here, that we're only consulting. If we're going to do that, then why aren't you choosing to consult on the others? And you've excluded them. So you've already made some decisions around certain things by excluding consultation on those. So again, if you're going to run that argument, you need to consult on all of them. And if you're going to make a decision, then let's make a decision. The community, during the whole Three Waters debacle, were very keen for councils to retain control, and that's really option 1.
I think I've already stated the level of control that anyone might have going forward, given the environment they're going to be working in, but point noted, and I think it's just a pragmatic approach to a limited budget. To only concentrate on lesser options means we can spend that money more targeted. Consulting on all 5 will necessitate significantly more work. So that's the rationale. Councillor McKenzie, right of reply, and then I'll put the resolution.
No, I'd just like to say that I think it's a good process. As you all know, I'm a big fan of good, robust business cases to inform decisions. I hope that actually we can make that business case available to the public, so that in actual fact they can see, what's behind it when we get to a point of actually deciding what we're going to consult on. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Oh, sorry. No, it is by division. My bad. Back up the truck. Robin, yes.
Councillor Walker. 4. I'm going reverse. Councillor Shellcrass.
4.
Councillor Maru.
4.
Councillor Mailing.
4.
Councillor McKenzie. 4. Councillor Kinmonth.
4.
Councillor Hill.
4.
Councillor Greening.
Against.
Councillor Ellis. 4. Councillor Dowler.
4.
Councillor Dakey.
4.
Councillor Butler. 4. Deputy Mayor Bryant.
4.
Mayor King.
4.
13-1.
13-1. Yeah, just go. All right. Thank you. So next up, so we have 2 options. We could either proceed with the Chief Executive's update or the Mayoral Activity Report, or we could go into committee while we're still, reasonably, and consider the 2 items in committee items, and then do the other 2 items more latterly when we come back out of committee. I'm easy either way. Going to do the confidential first while we're okay. So we'll move in. Righto. Technicalities. Righto. We'll carry on. Leonie, we'll come to your report.
Through the Mayor, kia ora. You've got the right report. I've actually got quite a number of topics in there today. I'm sure you've read it. I do just want to put your attention to item 10, which is Office of the Auditor General, Public Sector Infrastructure Performance Audit. We've had our first meeting with members of the Auditor General's office, and it's very positive. We feel it's actually quite an opportunity for us. They'll be able to help us with some of our planning, looking at what we're doing, noting that they chose us because we are a unitary council and have different challenges to perhaps what a larger regional council has. So happy to take any questions.
Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one in terms of item 13, Leonie, is the benchmark of local government 37% in terms of overall score? Or is that a typo? 13.2.
That number is correct.
Right. And then just a comment in terms of 13.4, because that's a pretty good percentage, but I take it the team will look and see if there's any clusters in your groupings. So ask your team if there's any positions, departments that might be dragging that down.
Are you talking about this is a great place to work?
Yeah.
Look, we've got a presentation that's coming to the leadership team, I think next week, which is going through some of the findings and some of the clusters or the areas we could improve. Some of it's just around workload, some of it's around things that are not necessarily within our direct control, but certainly we will do quite a deep dive into some of the areas that we think we can improve on.
Yeah. And I just want to recognise that that's through a period of a long-term plan with a huge workload and a lot of political pressure. So, good results.
We generally rate pretty high considering the local government environment. So it was a very positive result and some really nice comments in there too.
Thank you. Councillor McKenzie, then Councillor Greening.
Yes, I wanted to reflect on that as well because, even getting 82.9% of people to actually fill out the survey, that is actually a phenomenal result. So really, I would like to congratulate you, Leonie, on your leadership and the whole of the leadership team because I do think it's a great result. So well done.
Councillor Greening.
Yeah, just 4 matters. First of all, Waimea, ongoing issues there. So I'm just wondering what the program is for improving that situation. What are we doing to make improvements?
Through the Mayor, look, the team are actually managing this very well and our performance is actually very good. The number of Waimeas is an issue. We are trying to put more out onto our website and out through social media to be more open and transparent in what we're doing. When we do get the deployments, we're quite often putting them onto our website. I know we're slightly delayed, but there are a significant amount of them to make sure that we don't get repeat questions around the same thing. What you'll note is that look, we've had a wide range of issues across our communities. We've been through LTPs, we've had some contentious issues, I guess, in the last 12 months, and that raises a lot of Waimeas. We get quite a lot around the Waimea Dam, etc. So it's a bit of an ongoing thing because of the type of environment we're in at the moment.
So I take it from that answer that we're not actually doing any changes, we're just publishing them online as an FAQ process.
Well, I'm not sure what changes we could make other than looking at the resourcing in there, making sure we're giving full and complete answers. And when we feel that there's public interest, we're trying to put stuff out into the media and into our Facebook channels.
Yeah. So I think that has been the criticism in the past, that the answers haven't been necessarily forthright or open, and hence you get repetitive Waimea questions because the original answer wasn't answered. So if we're trying to improve our answers, that's great. And I look forward to seeing those Waimea requests coming down if we succeed in that. But at the moment, I would suggest that we're not.
Excellent. Next one.
Yeah. So the next one, digital. So you've indicated there are some challenges in resourcing. So I'm just wondering, why does testing, security system architecture and change management costs need this funding? Was it not planned? And does this diversion of funding mean that additional funding will be required to deliver Horizon 1? And how much was diverted? So this is at para 7.2.
Through me, I'll get Steve Manners to answer that question.
Through me, thanks for your question, Councillor Greening. I'm just going to navigate to the section myself. So, pointing to the fact that the program is largely on track, we have had challenges, as we've said, through a number of functions. Testing was part of our original program. The degree to which we needed to invest in testing depended on the scope of the program, and that became apparent as we went through discovery phases. We've also elected to adopt an automated testing program so that it could provide us with a more effective means of testing our delivery as we move forward with different modules rather than just the one that we've got. We've also found that there is a greater degree to which we need to revisit some of the working processes that we have. Waimea is one of those, and we're working in that space to see how we might be able to automate some of that work. And that's required us to use more analytical effort than we were expecting at the outset of the program. I don't have to hand the amount of money which we've diverted to those, but I can find that out and I'll send it through to you and other councillors, but it is all within existing program budgets at this stage.
So I gather from your answer that the scope has slightly changed.
I can see how you might draw that conclusion. Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. The scope is still to deliver the systems that we have identified to date. To it, the CRM, customer relationship management, is the largest single component, and the scope of that has reflected the requirement for us to address deficiencies across the digital platform. So that's a long-winded way of saying the broad scope remains the same. The timing at which we are addressing different elements of the scope is different. We're working in the program through a series of horizons, Horizon 1 through Horizon 4. The very first Horizon 0 that we took was the design horizon, and that indicated to us that we were better to do some things earlier rather than later. And so the scope of the horizons have changed. The overall program remains the same.
And so will there be any need for more funding, given you've diverted this funding to this activity?
For the projects that we have currently got in train, there will be no requirement for further funding that we can foresee this side of the long-term plan. We may decide to bring a proposal to council later in this triennium to consider whether or not there are advantages to the organisation to bring forward our investment in a new financial management system. And that will require us to consider additional ways of funding that, but we are hopeful that we would be able to achieve that within the capital envelope that's been established as part of the long-term plan process.
So I take from that answer, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the funding that has been diverted, which is what you stated in the report, is a consequence of timing issues and that no additional funding will be required.
Largely, yes. There are timing issues. It's a swings and roundabouts type of argument in some respects. There are some elements that we are able to do more cost effectively than others. And so where we make savings in one part of scope, we might be spending money in another. For example, our automated testing platform is more expensive and is costing us more than we had originally budgeted for testing. And in that sense, it's more money than we had identified for that item, but it will reduce the amount not only for testing in subsequent phases of the project, but it also comes because we've found that we need to invest less in other aspects of functionality.
Okay, fantastic, thank you. My third question is just in relation to the OAG, which the CEO has already spoken to, but I just want to get an idea of the scope of what they're inquiring. So does this include examining whether we're providing adequate funding of stormwater maintenance, which is inherent in flood protection, as well as the constant deferral of flood protection projects like Wilkes Park and parts of Richmond South? Given its importance, I think the OAG and staff report, should there be two of them, I think they should come back to full council rather than a subcommittee, given it's quite important and it's from the OAG. And that's in relation to 3, which was suggesting going to a subcommittee.
What you've got in front of you is a bit of a snippet of what I had at the time. So I haven't included the scope in this yet. So we will look at bringing it back to whatever forum we think appropriate. If I think that's full council, then it will. It might go through the Audit and Risk Committee and then go on to the full council. So yeah, if you're interested in the scope, it was pretty light. It was about a 2-pager really. It was quite broad. And they've only just started the piece of work, so I'm sure that scope will become more transparent as we go along the process. Yeah,
it is very much focused. It is very much focused on flood protection, but there is inevitably a link and a connection, depending on which community and on where you're talking. Myself, Leonie, and Deputy Mayor Bryant met with them. It was about an hour. We covered a fairly broad range of discussions around activities, financing priorities, the relationship between stormwaters and flood management. We encourage them to speak to a range of other people who may not share the same opinion as us about how we deliver our services. We offered to facilitate the opportunity for them to meet with, whether it's river care groups, contractors, other people who have a view about how we perform our role in flood management, as opposed to just talking to us about how we perceive what we do. Whether they take that up or not is obviously over to them. Yeah, and we can circulate that, which is a fairly basic terms of reference, so that you can see what their job description is.
Yeah, certainly welcome. As the CEO suggested, circulating terms of reference, that'd be great. And my final point, just in relation, is a general admin matter, really, which is the minutes. And we've seen a high volume of minutes introduced today. We endeavoured to streamline the minutes process, yet they seem to take forever to circulate. And this makes it, because of the time delay, probably councillors probably starting to get a bit fuzzy about what actually happened and what didn't happen and what was said, to actually challenge the accuracy of the minutes. So it would be useful if the minutes, given we've made all these improvements to streamlining and we now record much of what happens in public online, that these minutes are circulated a little bit faster, given also how many council meetings we've had in the last 6 weeks, which is a lot more than we normally do in terms of full council meetings. So I do think there seems to be something awry there if our minutes are taking so long.
To the Mayor, look, I note what you're saying. Look, we're really stretched in resource in the governance space, and with a number of meetings, as you can appreciate, the complexity of some of the agenda items and the size of some of our agendas is why it does take some time. We're reliant on 1 or 2 people who run this full council. I've come from a council where you've got hordes of people who support a committee like this. So I actually think they do pretty well, considering how little resource they actually have in that space.
I'm just basing my opinion on the past, where minutes, which were substantially larger, got circulated faster. Thank you.
Thank you. Point noted. Other comments? Councillor Walker? No? Yes? No? If not, I'll move that the CEO's report be received. Seconded, Councillor Mailing. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Then next up, I think, is mine, is it? It's me. I'll take it as read. There is an awful lot on. I guess it's kind of shows up there, as we've touched on earlier, the conversations around local water done well, other legislative reform programs. Again, you can see through the various speeches that have been circulated, the direction that central government is taking around a lot of this. Some of that is becoming more certain. There still remains a lot of uncertainty around some of the other key areas, particularly around RMA reform, although the fundamentals are becoming much clearer. And it does look like it is going to be, again, as we discussed with local water done well, a very different approach to resource management legislation than we have had probably for the whole life of the RMA, through the various different governments that have And it's certainly very different from the suggestions that were being made by the previous government for reforming the RMA. I am sure that will have a wide range of views and public opinion about the merits or otherwise of a new approach, and it is likely to impact on councils in terms of where their focus is going to be, what the priorities are, where our resources are placed. So again, we'll see more of that coming up into the new year. That said, as usual in my report, it covers a huge amount of stuff that regardless of what central government's doing, or in many ways, regardless of what we're doing, the community just gets on doing stuff. I'm fortunate enough to get invited and go to lots of different occasions celebrating different community, whether it's volunteers, whether it's outcomes. The most recent couple of things I've been to around the 2 playgrounds that we've recently opened in both Wakefield and Moutere. Both of those have been really well received by the communities, really well supported by the communities in terms of how they've been developed. And so there is a lot of positive things that just happen through the hard work of council staff, combined with community volunteers and community input, that whatever happens at the higher level, that level of community involvement and delivery of things just carries on. So it's nice to be involved in a lot of them. It's also nice to be able to share that around sometimes for people who I tap on the shoulder to go to 1 or 2 of these things. Hopefully you go to some of the more enjoyable ones. I don't just pass off the ones that are, oh dear. But it is phenomenal, the amount of stuff that goes on every week, every month, that we play a part in sometimes, but often just community members get on and doing things. And without that, obviously we'd be a lot less richer as a society. Oh, the only other thing I would touch on is we've had 2 citizenship ceremonies this month. Thank you to those councillors who have come along. So Councillor Ellis, Councillor Walker, I think Councillor Dowler might have come to one. So if you do get the opportunity to come along, I think they're in the calendar. They're really positive, enjoyable occasions. And I think we had 54 people 2 weeks ago. We had to put an extra citizenship ceremony, another 54 people again yesterday. So again, it's fantastic to see the diversity in terms of where people have come from, have the opportunity to chat to them about why they've chosen Tasman as the place to live. The one thing you always get is people who are coming here, who are making a conscious choice, how much they appreciate what we have, which isn't always the case for those of us who live here all the time and just like take it for granted is not the ideal term, but quite often it's easier to find the things that aren't great about it. Whereas when you go to those occasions, the focus is very much on what is great about it, which is why people have chosen to live in this part of the region. But it is also noticeable how many people there are, and that is only going to increase because of exactly the reason. It is a very attractive place to live, and lots of people from a broad range of backgrounds and countries are choosing to make this their home, and that's great. Adds to our diversity, adds to our community, but it doesn't come without its challenges in terms of infrastructure development, the impact on existing towns and villages, etc. So a balance to be found. With that, I will move my report be received, and I'll come across to Councillor Greening, who's going to second it and ask a question.
Yeah, I'm happy to second it. My question just relates to a couple of points, but they're kind of a little bit interrelated, and no doubt other councillors are also hearing this, but it was good to hear from Richard McCoy today. And I'm just wondering whether you have any comment in relation to council taking the opportunity to provide greater clarity, because clearly there appears from the presentation today still a lack of it on the issues that is raised. I think it's important that council does take that opportunity to provide clarity. I know we've made some statements in the past around the tiny home situation, but also emphasised the economic situation in the wider community. And only recently, ComCom has approved price increases in electricity, which is going to hit everyone. And I appreciate that the majority of councillors didn't support in the last LTP the theme of affordability. I'm hoping that as people see more people losing jobs, the government being criticised for its macroeconomic policies, which is causing a lot of distress and probably some departure, that we take that in consideration when we come to reviewing our annual plan process as well. And one hopes that affordability does become a central theme because it is hitting people quite hard.
Yeah, absolutely. I think central government has indicated through the conversation around rate or revenue capping that they are very exercised in terms of their view of local government. That reflects community sentiment in terms of the rate increases that were rolled out around the country through the LTP process. So I have no doubt that that will be a very strong focus, notwithstanding the fact that central government has the levers they may also pull. But I know Leonie and the staff, there is a huge amount of effort and work going into ensuring, A, we can meet this year's budget, and secondly, that we can maintain what we plan to do going forward. So, yep, absolutely take that on board. It remains a very challenging economic environment, both for households, businesses, anyone operating currently, despite interest rates reducing and some degree of positivity through the housing market as a result of that. But absolutely, I take on board that point. Secondly, in terms of today's public forum conversation, we have another meeting on the 11th of December. Again, I'm aware that the council staff through the planning consenting department have put a lot of work into suggestions that they will bring to that meeting over what we may be able to do. Now, again, that's going to be over to us to implement. We're obviously waiting to see the passage of the legislation that the government's proposing around this. But again, it's like so many of the issues. There is no simple, easy answers as much as people want simple and easy answers. It is not. And I know a number of councillors, including Councillor Dakey, have put a significant amount of thought and effort into the sort of options that we can consider as well. So that is coming back to us on the 11th of December for conversation as well. So, yeah. Councillor Kinnemont.
Thank you. Through the chair. Clause 3.3 on your report talks about a meeting with Ngāti Rarua Te Aotearoa for a proposed memorandum of understanding. Can you flesh that out a wee bit more for me, like the purpose of it and
so
the meeting and what's the effect on governance?
So what was previously NRATE, so Ngāti Rarua Te Aotearoa Iwi Trust, and is now Whakarewa. It was just a conversation over their place, in particularly around Moutere, as a significant player in both property, horticulture, employment, business. And I guess the overall conversation was Wakatu has a fairly high profile, and we often discuss the role of Wakatu in relation to council. NRATE/Whakarewa historically have a lower profile, but they're still a very significant player, particularly in the Moutere area. And it was just really a high-level conversation. Anything that develops out of it in terms of a memorandum of understanding will clearly come back through council.
Thank you.
Anything further? Deputy Mayor Brian has seconded the receipt of my. Oh no, Councillor Greening seconded it actually. So he did, yes. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. So that does draw us to the conclusion of the open part of the meeting. So we will now go into committee now. So we'll go into committee, we'll then break for the lunch break. Then we have to Ura Kahika's presentation at 1, and then we will come back and conclude the balance of the meeting post that presentation. No, it's not in committee. It's not in committee, is it? No, that's not part of the meeting. It's not part of the meting. So effectively, we're going into committee, adjourning the meeting. They know what we're doing, Stu. I've got no idea. So
when are we going in committee? When are we going into committee?
We are going in now. The meeting will then be adjourned. We'll have the two Ura Kahika presentation. And then we'll go back into the meeting, at which point we will be in committee to consider the in-committee items. So no, so you do. So we're going to adjourn.
Need a seconder.
Yep. Move Deputy Mayor Bright, seconded Councillor Mailing. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? We're back in here at 1. Correct. Yep.